Why the 2021 Canadian elections can't and shouldn't be won by the Conservative Party of Canada. Opening parenthesis. The merger of the real centre-right party in Canada. Still present at the provincial assemblies. But not long after the ultimate carnage, the Liberals, with the help of the Bloc Québécois and New Democratic Party, left it with 3 seats in Parliament following the early 90s corruption scandals. I'm talking obviously about the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. Stephen Harper was a member of that party long before he was Prime Minister from 2006 to 2015. And to those who know their politics, no, he should have lost to an attempted Lib plus NDP coalition in 2011. Something that made him furious, so much so that he somehow made it impossible. Canada, unlike many other former British colonies, can, but never had a coalition government. It wasn't until the 60s that we were just like the US with a two-party system at the federal level. Those who profess hating Trudeau as a way of life are blinded, like those who hated Trump so much just seeing a picture of him would make them scream insults. I'm no fan of Trudeau. But had Andrew Scheer won the 2019 elections, do you think you would have had all this money? All this money when COVID-19 showed up, and later on, as they wanted those who worked to only work very part-time. To prevent traveling from place to place, people with simple menial jobs who are still considered essential, grocery stores for example, or a butchery like where one of my relative is managing. Hell no, you wouldn't have. Or if you did, it would have been ridiculous, like the laughable help the federal government offered Americans. And many never had it, just like it was made slower to obtain because Trump wanted the checks to say they were coming from him, not the US government. Why am I talking about Trump? Well, that's just one example of this COVIDian world we live in. Although Canada is the third least impacted country on Earth per 100,000 citizens, at least infection-wise, we're getting big inflation on food too, which should be temporary and go back down. But the now Conservative Party of Canada, which has many Trumpists and even Q people as MPs as of now, that mindwire from the USA has slipped into our country, and that's obvious as to why for many reasons. But let us focus on ex-PCPC member, then ex-Reform Party, but they weren't extreme enough even for him, so he was then Canadian Alliance. Christian identity-based party, based on xenophobia against French-speaking Canadians, considering them another, lower race, on top of the usual Christian identity, doomsday evangelist cultists. Even people of my age. Zillennials, 1977 to 1985, those of us who experienced 9/11 when we were 16 to 23. Were different from millennials as in, we didn't grow up with awful pop music programmed to hypnotize the masses. Which kick-started around 1997. When rock in all its forms went back underground. And that was for the better, pure truth music such punk rock, hardcore, some metal bands, of all kinds, although I would exclude black metal from truth music. The Progressive Conservative Party dissolved when their chief, Jean Charest, left to try to become Quebec's Liberal Party ticket in the 1998 elections. I say it with quotes, because Charest and his clique have turned the PLQ into a right-wing party. Quebec did not have a right-wing party since the late 60s when the Duplessistes Union Nationale dissolved. He went on to be elected in 2003 later on, and during his 9 years, his agenda was a mirror of the federal government. We're a confederation, but those guys want us to forget we are. Led by Harper from late 2005 to September 2015 when he was given the boot for good. So what did little Steve do? He got those three parties to merge, not as the prog-cons of old, but as the brand new Conservative Party of Canada. Hardly conservative when it comes to the actual definition. Taking out the progressive word from the party was not a signal of embracing the status quo. Which conservatism was before everyone became a target of Op Mockingbird. In the US and later on obviously its closest allies, primarily Canada back then, even Bush 1 and Clinton considered us more important allies than Britain, who doesn't have resources like we do. Low information voters, I write this for you. You can live in a fantasy that changing from a centre-right party like the Canadian Liberal Party for a solid right-wing coalition of wingnuts. Some who are still MPs from way back, who used to be reform, Canadian alliance parties that perverted the PCPC when merging into the CPC. Get off foreign and dark money-funded media, websites you think are subversive when they are just messing with your mind, following the teachings of Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Aquino and General Paul E. Vallely. Misspelled on the front page as Valley, as if he didn't want anyone outside his publication from PSYOPS to mind war for the AFIO. Association of Former Intelligence Officers. In 1980. The year where America was stolen blatantly for the first time through PSYOPs. Sabotage on purpose of all helicopters sent to pick up the hostages in Iran by the US-owned military, to get Reagan in, who was losing in the polls in October 1980 by a significant margin. That switched very quickly when Zabig's and CIA's plan for Carter was thwarted by seditious elements of the US military. We could expect some shenanigans if the results are too close. Thankfully Canada is not a two-party system at the federal level. And many provinces, but that's not relevant as to the election on September 20th. The NDP, BQ Greens. And Harper's ex-little poodle from the Biche region of Quebec. Maxime Bernier's Canada's Populist Party or whatever he calls it, he was ejected of his own riding in 2019, he's a joke in Quebec and he should be in every other provinces. The guy is just doing this out of spite at the Conservative Party for not conforming to his sudden alt-right views a few years after the CPC lost in 2015. If the head of the party isn't even wanted in his riding, a very conservative area of Quebec, for some reason, it wasn't always like this in the Biche region. So he scrapes off the unhinged fascists, COVID deniers, Trumpists for lack of a better word. My head still spins that people started having a cult around Trump in my country, Canada, starting 2015. I'll share this article on Harper and the direction the Conservative Party of Canada has taken since he became their head in 2003 when those two fringe parties merged with the decapitated federal prog-cons in the 90s. To turn it into something very ugly. Controlled by foreign interests. Especially the Council on National Policy. Harper, after all the research I've done and seen others share, is the only Canadian person who ever was a member of the CNP. The CNP might as well be a front for some factions of CIA, DIA, NSA, and we all know, us little people, that those agencies target the whole of this planet and all of the minds it contains. I won't tell you who to vote for or to vote at all. Honestly, at this point I think a voting boycott is the biggest revolutionary tool we have. We can't wait for the boomers to pass away, not even the nowhere as bad as imagined in March 2020 bug that goes around can't do that, and I don't wish anyone who doesn't deserve it harm. They led us into this sinking ship of debt and never thinking that their life would ever be affected by anything. Taking and destroying our environment to extend their lifespans, how ironic. The following article from A Politics. CA is still very relevant. It is from April 2016, just 6 months after Libs and the NDP massacred Harper and his cronies. It explains a little why Canada went backwards, very slowly but surely, when Council for National Policy. Secret ultra-right-wing allegation of extreme Christian identity, Christian Reconstructionist, Islamophobic Zionists, even some fascist and neo-Nazi members form their rank. If you don't believe me on how secret that think tank is, go to their website. Since more people are looking into them in the internet age. I would like to mention John from the We've Read the Documents channel as one of the most active person looking at them. From a conservative perspective nonetheless, and it's settled for researchers of his caliber and those who dare to understand how America and its allies seem to have veered off to fascism by 1981, year Reagan came into power, and also when the CNP was created. You will not find anything on their website. Those people forced their hand at making almost every link on their site passworded, firewalled. Although numerous leaks, the most recent from Max Blumenthal if I recall correctly, and also older ones documented on Mr. John Brisson's channel. They are the who's who of the religious hard right. Although what they preach isn't very Christian, even an agnostic like me, an atheist who has read the books before making their mind, are able to see that think tank is as powerful, even maybe a bit more so, inside the US than the CFR. It's all in the name. The CFR is a bad meme. They're right-wing fascists with a veneer of center-left and center-right moderate members of the high circles of the American political class. CFR loves foreign wars, CNP mostly loves, well, national policy, one of internal chaos where logic is considered a threat, among other things. From Apolitics. CA 10th of April 2016. How desperate are Republicans? They're taking tips from Harper. One of the most frequently asked questions in the wake of election 2015 is, where is Stephen Harper? Since getting crushed last October 19 by Justin Trudeau's Liberals, there have been more Wolverines spotted in Ottawa than confirmed Harper sightings. The odd vote in the House of Commons, a few leisurely afternoons in movie theaters with Ray the popcorn holder, and that's about it for his public profile. In caucus, he's a ghost. The guy who used to run everything now can't even be bothered showing up for work. Life without that security detail and those black SUVs just doesn't seem to be worth the effort. This is not just the post-defeat tradition of keeping a low profile. This is a vanishing. But apparently some things still get Steve's pulse racing. There was a fascinating report over the weekend from the U.S. website Politico placing the elusive ex-PM back in Las Vegas. You will recall that he was sighted there last November 26 at the Shake Shack. Was Steve developing a thing for the roulette wheel? Is he missing Wayne Newton's rendition of Danky Shern? No. Harper was the guest of one of the richest Republicans of them all, Sheldon Adelson. The billionaire casino mogul was hosting his annual, by invitation only, spring meeting of the Republican Jewish Coalition at his sumptuous Venetian hotel. Carrot equals. There are two requirements for attendance: doting on the 82-year-old host and being filthy rich. There is only one other category of attendee: entertainment. That would be Steve. Opening parenthesis. Carrot omega carrot. Exclamation mark. It is no small thing to catch Adelson's eye if you happen to be a Republican politician. In 2012 alone, the gambling tycoon, the world's 22nd richest man, donated $100 million to the Republican race for president, some of it lavished on former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who belly flopped despite all the boodle. This time around, with the GOP about to shoot itself or take poison. Depending on whether it selects Donald Trump or Ted Cruz as its presidential nominee. Adelson is not dispensing his largesse. A goodly number of his well-heeled guests are also sitting on their checkbooks. Harper's contribution to this Republican glitzerama was to sing for his supper with a speech about how to unite divided parties. You get some idea of how badly split the Republicans really are when they ask a guy like Harper for advice about healing divisions. Opening parenthesis. Carrot oh carrot. Steve is a gold medalist in the sport of apple of discord throwing. Since entering public life, he has tossed it into any organization he found himself associated with, in an effort to dominate. But why do it for the Republican Party when he can't be bothered with Canadian politics now that he's been reduced to the status of mere mortal? Harper has always had multiple political personalities. It's just that a lot of people either never knew, or have forgotten. In his earliest days, Harper succumbed briefly to Trudeau mania. Then there was Harper the Progressive Conservative. Next came Harper the Reformer. After that he was Harper of the Canadian Alliance. Finally he morphed into Harper the Conservative Party of Canada member. Behind it all, like the Wizard of Oz concealed by his curtain, is Harper the Republican. Harper's trip to Adelson's mansion was not the first time he's sung for his supper with the wealthy kingmakers of the GOP. The year was 1997 and the venue was Montreal. Harper was asked to speak to the Council for National Policy, a secretive group of powerful American conservatives who hold thrice-yearly confidential conferences. The CNP is sniffer-in-chief of prospective GOP presidential candidates hoping to pass the smell test with the American right. Harper's 1997 secret speech was the one where he trashed his own country for the amusement of his American conservative hosts. Here are some of the statements he made that June night. Canada is a northern European welfare state in the worst sense of the term. And proud of it. In terms of the unemployed, of which we have over 1.5 million, don't feel particularly bad for many of these people. They don't feel bad about itself themselves, as long as they're receiving generous social assistance and unemployment insurance. The important point is that Canada is not a bilingual country. It is a country with 2 languages. And there is a big difference. Quote. Harper proceeded to trash Canada's parliamentary system, its Supreme Court and the Senate. He also had a few choice words for the country's political parties. Quipping that the NDP is kind of proof that the devil lives and interferes in the affairs of men. The NDP is also explicitly a branch of the Canadian Labour Congress, which is by far our largest Labour group, and explicitly radical. Quote. It is worth noting that this inconvenient speech surfaced in December 2005 in the midst of a hotly contested federal election campaign in Canada. Although journalists were barred from covering Harper's speech back in 1997, a copy of the address was posted on the website of the Council for National Policy. It was subsequently picked up by the Canadian press. Opposition parties tried to use it during that election campaign to make the case that Harper had a hidden agenda with Republican overtones. Sadly for Canadians, the RCMP eclipsed Harper's Montreal speech with the announcement that it was launching a probe into possible budget leaks regarding income trusts. Interestingly, Harper's speech was subsequently scrubbed from the Council for National Policy website. Along with rubbing shoulders with the bagman of the Republican Party in Sheldon Adelson's mansion, Stephen Harper managed to run into another old friend in Las Vegas, Arthur Finkelstein. Finkelstein, who helped several conservative candidates to the presidency, had been hired by the right-wing National Citizens Coalition to help turn Canada blue. After leaving the Reform Party, Harper ran the NCC for 5 years. Finkelstein was instrumental in teaching Canadian conservatives commando politics and the art of the attack ad. When Harper wanted to test the waters for a run at political leadership back in 1998, it was Finkelstein, the consummate Republican political consultant, that he commissioned to do a poll. It appears that Canada's one and only Tea Party Republican politician has found his natural home in the Nevada desert. I wonder if this was a paid gig.